Hello, everybody. Oops. Can you hear me? I might have turned the wrong one on. But hello, Flamekin, Green Augment, and DeathSaid419. It is lovely to see you all. Flamekin, are you, I recognize your name. And I was about to say, are you the Ink Chimera? But Ink Chimera has nothing to do with flames, so I don't think that's correct. Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it. Real quick, a little check. I'm gonna turn this. So I have a Yeti right here next to me, and I'm using my computer mic because it seemed better. But I'm gonna check. So I'm gonna turn off my computer mic and see if you like the Yeti better. Okay, so this is me talking with the Yeti. Do you like that better or worse than, I just realized that the chat is so translucent. I don't know if I can fix that right now, but that's annoying. Okay, I think the first will be better. That's good enough for me. All right. Well, tonight we are going to be starting Pride and Prejudice. I honestly had a different plan for this stream. I was gonna use it as a welcome stream and, okay. I was going to use it as a welcome stream and talk about like the rules and maybe do the prompt intro live on the stream. But that plan went awry, so we're doing this. So I hope you guys are ready for some good times. So yes, indeed. Green says, I'm here, just multitasking. That is all right. I'm glad to have you here. Eddie, you officially got your first spot trying to sell crap. I think that officially makes you a streamer. Amazing. Glad to have you here, Eddie, even if you can only pop in for a second. Yes, I mentioned this on the previous stream. Hello, Norman. But I know absolutely nothing about Pride and Prejudice. I should probably zoom out. Yeah, let you guys see the whole book for now. I know absolutely nothing about this book. I have never watched any of the movies. I have never read this book before. I have never read like spin-offs or spoofs or anything. I know nothing about it. So hopefully you guys are going to get some genuine grade A reactions from me. And that is what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be reading and I will pause to react and make jokes and stuff like that, and hopefully it'll be a good time. I appreciate that, Death said. Green says, okay, you have my full attention. Amazing. But yeah, I was actually going to I don't know if your guys' schools did this, but when I was in school, they would talk about the author first and be like, hey, like this is the author, this is their life, this is kind of when they wrote the book and why. And I wanted to do that, but as I said, my plans went awry. So maybe we'll do that next time. Maybe it'll be a little disjointed, but yeah. So currently, I also know nothing about Jane Austen either. Yes, Green, that is the not-so-private chat, indeed. It's so nice to see your little butterfly next to your name. Oh, cool. Flamekin says never read or watched any of the movies either, so looking forward to this. Awesome. I don't know how I am going to feel about this book. As I think a lot of you are aware, I am more into the monsters. I like Frankenstein and Dracula and stuff like that, and so I don't know how I'm going to feel about this. I don't know how I'm going to react, but that's what we're going to find out together today. Today we're reading Pride and Prejudice. What? By Jane Austen? Who? Yep, exactly. Yeah, all I know is there's Mr. Darcy, and there's a main character. I do not remember what the main character's name is. Hopefully we'll learn that quickly. And they love each other, but one of them has too much pride and one of them has too much prejudice, and they, like, I think it takes the whole book for them to admit that they're in love with each other. Yes, so I do have a little reading lamp here. I guess I can do a little test of that as well. Do you guys prefer, where is it? That lighting or, oh yeah, okay, that's way better. The monsters in this is societal norms and misunderstanding. Amazing. The way that was phrased was like, maybe the monsters were the societal norms we made along the way. And I kind of love that. All right, so I think we'll just get right to it. I bought this book at Barnes & Noble this very week because I liked the title, or not the title, I liked the cover. I just, and I'd never read it and thought it might be good to start with. Oh, thanks. It took some setting up, and funnily enough, it's a pretty old camera, but I'm glad that it's working out. I'm glad that you can see it clearly. But yes, here is our book with presumably the manor and all the I can give you some ASMR. The birds and stuff. I don't know if the birds are just for fun or if they mean something. But again, we're gonna find out. So let's do this. There's like a wallpaper, opening, and then I think that's just about whoever made the cover. There's that. I will zoom in a second. Don't you worry. All right, volume 1. Okay. Doodly-doo. Oh, that's zooming out. That's not in, that's out. All right, here we go. Excuse me. Oh yeah, I was gonna say, part of the reason I mentioned the reading light is because my shirt looks purple, but it's not. It's black. This is the color that it is. The orange light just makes it look wildly purple, which is very funny to me. But anyways, let us begin with chapter 1. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. However little known the feelings or views of such a man may be on his first entering a neighborhood, this truth is so well fixed in the minds of the surrounding families that he is considered as the rightful property of someone or other of their daughters. That is pretty funny. I do like that. It's like, that one, he's mine. He's rich and he needs a wife. That wife is me. I do think it's kind of funny though, like, it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of good fortune must be in want of a wife. And I bet that this line is like quoted everywhere as like, yes, this is an amazing first line to a classic book. But I'm just sitting here like, is that true, my friends? I'm sure it was true at the time that this was written. But it's like, what if he's just like a strong, independent man who don't need no lady? Is that universally acknowledged? I don't know. Yeah, Green's top tier opening line, so Green likes it. Yeah, she said dibs, gotta respect it, exactly. Alright, my dear Mr. Bennet, said his lady to him one day, have you heard that Netherfield Park is let at last? Mr. Bennet replied that he had not. But it is, returned she, for Mrs. Long has just been here, and she told me all about it. Mr. Bennet made no answer. Do not you want to know who has taken it? Cried his wife impatiently. You want to tell me, and I have no objection to hearing it. This was invitation enough. Why, my dear, you must know Mrs. Long says that Netherfield is taken by a young man of large fortune from the north of England, that he came down on Monday in a chase. Is that how you say that? Chase. In a chase, and to see the place, and was so much delighted with it that he agreed with Mr. Morris immediately that he is to take possession before Michaelmas, and some of his servants are to be in the house by the end of next week. Michaelmas? Is that Christmas? I've never heard of this. I need to look this up. That is a funny word. Michaelmas. I love how dictionary.com says chiefly British. This isn't just British, it's chiefly British. A festival celebrated on September 29th in honor of the Archangel Michael. How have I never known that this was a thing? It now makes a lot more sense why in Pandora Hearts there are all these, like, festivals that celebrate angels specifically. I didn't know that people celebrated, angels. That's interesting. Chase is French for chair, pronounced chaise. Chaise. Interesting. Yeah, I guess I could look that up too while I'm looking stuff up. Well, I get sofas. Yeah, pronunciation, thank you. Yeah, just say chaise.
Chaise.
Okay, chaise. Well, I can look up the definition. A light open carriage, usually with a hood, especially a one-horse, two-wheeled carriage for two people. That's probably what it is. Let's go back to that. Okay, I'm not using this, so I'm going to unplug it and move it. Oh, much better. I really should have grabbed a bookmark. I've got some great ones. I can show them off in this. I didn't think of that as a benefit. Nope, it was back here. Was it? Oh yeah, he came down Monday in a chaise, so that it like he came in a carriage. Okay. Sound walked away. Okay. That's weird. So apparently, is it better now? Am I closer now? Yeah, I didn't think I was using it, but I guess I was. Now it's just a table. Huh. Hello, writer, and hello, Mako Cam. I didn't even. Oh, I see. Yeah, that makes. Still quiet. Uh-oh. What? Am I back? How about now? Is that working? Same. Like, yeah, no, go away. Yeah, I did. Okay. Better now? Okay, it's weird. I very much thought that I had the desktop, but it is the Yeti. It's weird they sound different. Like, the two inputs sound different, so I don't know what the deal is there. Okay. Alright. Okay, dokie. Oh yeah, and the other thing I was gonna say is that I can already tell. So hearing the name Bennett, I do think that these are the parents of the main lady, and I can already tell that they're gonna be a fun dynamic. That she's like, "Oh my goodness, did you hear the local gossip, dear husband?" And he's like, "Uh-huh." And then what was it that he said? It was something like, you're gonna tell me anyways, basically. Here, maybe I'll put the mic on this side. I think you'll still hear me okay. Oh yeah, you want to tell me, and I have no objection of hearing it, was the situation. Well, that didn't help. Okay. There we go. Here, I think that it's gonna give you some, yeah. I mean, it's gonna give you some black screen, but I think I'm gonna make the book smaller. Where'd it go? Yeah, this. Not that. So that I don't, hey, stop it. There we go. Yeah. Is that way the chat is not covering it. I mean, at the bottom it's covering it a little, but I think this is going to be a little easier to work with. Yep, Mr. and Mrs. Bennett are vibe. Experiencing technical difficulties, indeed. Alright. Okay. Let's get back to the book. Alright, so she's saying, I'll read that little part again. Yeah. Why, my dear, you must know, Mrs. Long says that Netherfield is taken by a young man of large fortune from the north of England, that he came down on Monday in a chaise and four to see the place, and was so much delighted with it that he agreed with Mr. Morris immediately that he is to take possession before Michaelmas, and some of his servants are to be in the house by the end of next week. What is his name? Bingley. Is he married or single? No, single, my dear, to be sure. A single man of large fortune, 4,000 or 5,000 a year. What a fine thing for our young girls. How so? How can it affect them? My dear Mr. Bennet, replied his wife, how can it be so tiresome? You must know that I'm thinking of his marrying one of them. Is that his design in settling here? Design? Nonsense! How can you talk so? It is very likely that he may fall in love with one of them, and therefore you must visit him as soon as he comes. I see no occasion for that. You and the girls may go, or you may send them by themselves, which perhaps will be still better, for as you are as handsome as any of them, Mr. Bingley might like you the best of the party. My dear, oh no. My dear, you flatter me. I certainly have had my share of beauty, but I do not pretend to be anything extraordinary now. When a woman has 5 grown-up daughters, she ought to give over thinking of her own beauty. That's an interesting phrase. Give over thinking. It's interesting that I kind of forgot that handsome could be used for ladies in the past. I like that. That's kind of neat. Assuming I got that right and that was Mr. Bennet speaking. And I do love okay, he's rich, he's single. What does that have to do with my daughters? You know? I don't know if they're setting up Mr. Bennet to be a little thick, but it's cute if so. And then, he may fall in love with one of them, as if, he just might trip and then fall in love with one of my daughters. It's totally not going to be a perfectly orchestrated plan by me. Yes, flirting with his wife, good example, totally. It can still be used for ladies. It can, but I don't really hear it just in the vernacular. How much am I planning on reading tonight? Well, let's take a look-see on how... that's 5. Oh, okay, the chapters are not long at all. I was gonna say at least a chapter, but I think we're gonna do multiple. I do not know how much. I do not know how many, especially because they are that short. What time is it? Yeah. Yeah, man, I hate it when I trip and fall in love with someone as a result. Exactly. For sure. I mean, yeah, that's how it works. You watched anime. I assume you mean the perfectly orchestrated plan part. Totally. It's usually used for older ladies in the modern day. Fair enough. Fair enough. And he can't stay for much longer. It's a shame he can't stay for much longer because this riffing on the Britishness and old-fashionedness of the novel makes this far more enjoyable than I imagined me reading a romance novel of my own could ever be. Oh, that makes me so happy, Eddie. I'm so happy to hear that. All right, let us continue. Okay. Oh yeah, and I was gonna say, I think this is a good example of like, because I'm sitting here wondering, hey, how many daughters do they have? Because like I said, I know nothing. And so I think this is a great, pretty natural way to bring up like, hey, I've had 5 daughters. I'm not as pretty as I used to be. I will admit that. I think that's a great little writing tip of like bringing up one of those details that might seem like an as you know detail, because this is something that someone could absolutely say in real life. Yeah, Mrs. Bennett is 100% aware of the grind, and 4,000 to 5,000 a year at that time was no joke. Oh yeah, we might need to look that up. Or I guess one of you could, and I could look back at the chat later and see. But anyways, I'll reread her last line. My dear, you flatter me. I certainly have had my share of beauty, but I do not pretend to be anything extraordinary now. When a woman has 5 grown-up daughters, she ought to give over thinking of her own beauty. In such cases, a woman has not often much beauty to think of. But, my dear, you must indeed go and see Mr. Bingley when he comes into the neighborhood. It is more than I engage for, I assure you. I'm curious what that means. It's like, it's more than I want to do, but I'll do it for you. That's what I'm guessing he means. And it's also kind of cute that he, well, it's both mean and cute at the same time that she's like, you know, when you have 5 daughters, you're not the same spring chicken anymore. And he's like, most people in your position, they ain't pretty at all, but you are, my lady. You are pretty. Give 2 more zeros to give a rough estimate. Oh yeah, I see that now. Alright. Continuing. But consider your daughters. Only think what an establishment it would be for one of them. Sir William and Lady Lucas are determined to go, merely on that account. For, in general, you know they visit no newcomers. Indeed, you must go, for it will be impossible for us to visit him if you do not. Oh, okay, so we're getting a little insight into, like, the man of the house has to go visit him because the ladies can't. Which also makes it cute that Mr. Bennett is like, yeah, you guys can go on your own. And she's like, bro, we can't. Like, you gotta go say hi first. That's how this works. We live in a patriarchy. Did you forget that? And I think she's also saying, like, hey, Sir William and Lady Lucas, they're gonna snatch him up. You need to go over there and ingratiate yourself to him. A year? I'm curious what that's in reference to. Anyways. You are over-scrupulous, surely. I dare say Mr. Bingley will be very glad to see you. I will send a few lines by you to assure him of my hearty consent to his marrying whichever he chooses of the girls. Though I must throw in a good word for my little Lizzie. That's our girl. It's Elizabeth. Remember that now. I love wording. I love chooses. Delightful. Like, it's so funny because it's not everywhere. It's not like every word, but it's just like dum-tee-dum, normal English, chooses. And what else was I gonna say? Oh yeah, like, I give my hearty consent to his marrying whichever he chooses of the girls. It's like, yeah, you go over there. I consent. Like, whoever he wants to marry, he can marry. It's cool. Yeah, totally. Norman says, not sure if I'm jealous or feel bad for this guy that he hasn't even showed up yet and everyone is fighting over him. Totally. Totally. I mean, I guess it goes back to the first line where it's just like, well, here's a rich man. He's in town. You know what that means. What does that mean? He needs a wife. So everyone's like, chop, get on the wife program. I don't know. Snatch him up, everybody. All right. Though I must throw in a good word for my little Lizzie. I desire you will do no such thing. Lizzie is not a bit better than the others, and I am sure she is not half so handsome as Jane, nor half so good-humoured as Lydia. But you are always giving her the preference. And they have none of them much to recommend them. What a thing to say about your own daughters! It's like, oh, like, I know that you favor Lizzie, but, like, your other daughters are great, too. And he's like, they're really not, though. Dang, son. Okay. They have none of them much to recommend them, replied he. They're all silly and ignorant like other girls, but Lizzie has something more of quickness than her sisters. Mr. Bennet, how can you abuse your own children in such a way? You take delight in vexing me. You have no compassion on my poor nerves. That's a great phrase. You have no compassion on my poor nerves. I love that. You mistake me, my dear. No, wrong voice. You mistake me, my dear. I have a high respect for your nerves. That's even better. I love that. I have a high respect for your nerves. They're my old friends. Why does this keep getting cuter? I've heard you mention them with consideration these 20 years at least. Oh, that's amazing. I'll reread that because I was laughing through the whole thing. You mistake me, my dear. I have a high respect for your nerves. They're my old friends. I've heard you mention them with consideration these 20 years at least. You do not know what I suffer. But I hope you will get over it, and live to see many young men of 4,000 a year come into the neighborhood. It will be no use to us, if 20 such should come, since you will not visit them. Is that? Yeah, that's correct. Okay. Depend on it, my dear, that when there are 20, I will visit them all. Nice. Oh. Depend on, my dear, for when there are 20, I will visit them all. Mr. Bennet was so odd a mixture of quick parts, sarcastic humour, reserve, and caprice, that the experience of 23 years had been insufficient to make his wife understand his character. Her mind was less difficult to develop. She was a woman of mean understanding, little information, and uncertain temper. When she was discontented, she fancied herself nervous. The business of her life was to get her daughters married. Its solace was visiting and news. Interesting. So 23 years, does that mean 23 or 30? Or 33? No, it wouldn't be 33, I don't think. What does that mean? 23. Okay. Wow. It just goes to show you how, like, I guess slowly people mature nowadays, because I'm like, I was reading him like either 30 or 40 or 60, something like that. I was not thinking this man was younger than me. 23 years of marriage. Okay, so that makes a little more sense. If any of you know when they got married, feel free to let me know. Translation, they're basic. The other daughters, yeah. Oh, well, my dear wife, my other daughters, they're basic. Amazing. Man is just trying to streamline his afternoon. If he has to go out, he's gonna mention the one he thinks he can sell and get home before football. Yep, totally. Totally. I do think that, going back to the whole thing of, like, mentioning stuff the readers want to know, I do think that we got to know a little bit about, like, oh, okay, so, okay, where'd it go? Okay, so Jane is the pretty one. So Jane is more pretty than Elizabeth. And Lydia is good-humored. I don't know if that means that she's, like, cheerful, or if that means she's healthy. Yeah. To be blunt, my dear, she's mid-AF. Totally. Alright. Let us continue on. Chapter 2. Mr. Bennet was among the earliest of those who waited on Mr. Bingley. So it goes from him being like, nope, I'm not going. I have football to watch, sweetie. I will send a letter. You go. I don't want to deal with this. He can marry whoever he wants. And the next chapter is, well, he was there the earliest. I love that. All right. Mr. Bennet was among the earliest of those who waited on Mr. Bingley. He'd always intended to visit him, though to the last always assuring his wife that he should not go, and till the evening after the visit was paid, she had no knowledge of it. It was then disclosed in the following manner. Observing his second daughter employed in trimming a hat, he suddenly addressed her with, "Is there any..." Okay, so she's literally sitting there trimming a hat, and he's like, "Hi, hell of a Gilligan cut. What does that mean?" No wonder this is a classic. Yeah, I'm starting to see it already. All right. I hope Mr. Bingley will like it, Lizzie. We are not in a way to know what Mr. Bingley likes. Oh, that's the mother. Okay. We are not in a way to know what Mr. Bingley likes, said her mother resentfully, since we are not to visit. But you forget, Mamma, said Elizabeth, that we shall meet him at the assemblies, and that Mrs. Long has promised to introduce him. Okay. I do not believe Mrs. Long will do any such thing. She has 2 nieces of her own. She is a selfish, hypocritical woman, and I have no opinion of her. It sounds like you have an opinion of her. I don't know if have no opinion meant something different back then, but it just kind of sounds like... Yeah, she's the absolute worst. Like, she's selfish, she's hypocritical, like, she's a gossip, like, she smells like cheese all the time. I have no opinion on her. It's like... Gilligan cut. There's no way I'm doing that. Cut that to them doing that. Popularized by Gilligan's Island. Yes, totally. I'm not sure what the till is that we're talking about here. No opinion, just facts. That's amazing. She's selfish, she's hypocritical, she's a gossip, she smells like cheese all the time. I have no opinion on her. That kind of sounds like you have an opinion on her. Oh, that's just the facts, my dear. I love that. Alright. No more have I, said Mr. Bennet. And I am glad to find that you do not depend on her serving you. Mrs. Bennet deigned not to make any reply, but, unable to contain herself, began scolding one of her daughters. The way that's phrased sounds like she's just, like, bursting with emotion, and she's like, what do I do with this? Elizabeth! What? What did I do? Take out the trash! Or I guess that's not scolding, like, that curl of your hair is out of place! Alright, but unable to contain herself, began scolding one of her daughters. Don't keep coughing so, Kitty, for heaven's sake! Have a little compassion on my nerves. You tear them to pieces. Oh, I hope this is a running theme. I hope this is a running theme in the book. Like, Mrs. Bennet's nerves are a character in the book. And I can see the next line, and Mr. Bennet speaking facts. Kitty has no discretion in her coughs, said her father. She times them ill. Oh no, I thought he was saying like she can't control her coughs. And no, he's agreeing, which is not facts, but is funny. And then he's like, your coughs, man. No discretion at all. Kitty has no discretion in her coughs, said her father. She times them ill. I do not cough for my own amusement, replied Kitty fretfully. When is your next ball to be, Lizzie? Tomorrow fortnight. Aye, so it is, cried her mother, and Mrs. Long does not come back till the day before, so it will be impossible for her to introduce him, for she will not know him herself. I think this is Mr. Bennet. Then, my dear, you may have the advantage of your friend, and introduce Mr. Bingley to her. Impossible, Mr. Bennet, impossible, when I am not acquainted with him myself. How can you be so teasing? Oh, another precious little spelling. I love it. Yeah, I can't come up with a good comeback time to take it out on the kids. Totally. Alright. I honor your circumspection. A fortnight's acquaintance is certainly very little. One cannot know what a man really is by the end of a fortnight. I'm glad we admit that. But if we do not venture, somebody else will. And after all, Mrs. Long and her nieces must stand their chance. And therefore, as she will think of it as an act of kindness, if you decline the office, I will take it on myself. The girls stared at their father. Mrs. Bennet only said, Nonsense! Nonsense! Wait, did I misunderstand that? Hang on. So how I'm understanding it is, like, he's, like, saying, like, so she's like, I'm not acquainted with him, so I can't introduce Mr. Bingley to Mrs. Long, because I don't know him. And he's like, okay, that's fair. You know, even if you're just acquainted for a couple weeks, that's very little. You can't know him that well by then. And then he's saying, okay, if we don't go meet him and try to marry him, we collectively are trying to marry him, that's established, then somebody else will, and Mrs. Long, you know, they deserve their chance to marry him, and she'll think it's kind. But if you decline the office, I will take it on myself, sounds like he's saying, okay, like, I'll go talk to him, which is exactly what Mrs. Bennet wants. So maybe I don't think I understand that last line. But if they're saying it's nonsense that they stand a chance, that's funny. So many rules to being old-timey rich. Yeah, absolutely. But anyways, let's continue. What can be the meaning of that emphatic exclamation? Cried he. Do you consider the forms of introduction and the stress that is laid on them as nonsense? I cannot quite agree with you there. What say you, Mary? For you are a young lady of deep reflection, I know, and read great books, and make extracts. So, you deeply reflect. You read great books. You make extracts. Are they almond? Are they of words? We don't know yet, but she makes them great. But you're basic. Let's see. So did I understand that? Yeah, I think I'll just keep going. Oh, we're at the end of the chapter. Oh, said Lydia stoutly, I'm not afraid. for though I am the youngest, I'm the tallest. The rest of the evening was spent in conjecturing how soon he would return Mr. Bennet's visit, and determining when they should ask him to dinner. I feel like I got lost somewhere in there. Oh, wait a second. Did I... Oh, no. I think I skipped a page. Did I? Yeah. Yes, I totally skipped this page. Okay. Mary wished to say something very sensible, but knew not how. I love that. Narrator giving her the benefit of the doubt. Like, she wanted to say something sensible. We all know it was sensible. She just didn't know how. Love it. While Mary is adjusting her ideas, he continued, let us return to Mr. Bingley. I'm sick of Mr. Bingley, cried his wife. I'm sorry to hear that. But why did you not tell me so before? If I had known as much this morning, I certainly would not have called on him. It is very unlucky, but as I have actually paid the visit, we cannot escape the acquaintance now. The astonishment of the ladies was just what he wished, that of Mrs. Bennet perhaps surpassing the rest, though when the first tumult of joy was over, she began to declare that it was what she had expected all the while. She's basically like, oh my... Totally what I expected. How good it was in you, my dear Mr. Bennet. But I knew I should persuade you at last. I was sure you loved your girls too well to neglect such an acquaintance. Well, how pleased I am. And it is such a good joke, too, that you should have gone this morning and never said a word about it until now. Now, Kitty, you may cough as much as you choose, said Mr. Bennet. And as he spoke, he left the room, fatigued with the raptures of his wife. Again, the way that's phrased is just like, all right, Kitty, you can cough as much as you want. I'm out. Bye. Yes, adjusting her ideas. I love that. I feel like we should use that in modern day. Well, while they're adjusting their ideas, I'll say something. Alright, where was it? What an excellent father you have, girls, said she, when the door was shut. I do not know how you will ever make him amends for his kindness, or me either, for that matter. At our time of life, it is not so pleasant, I can tell you, to be making new acquaintance every day. But for your sakes, we would do anything. Lydia, my love, though you are the youngest, I dare say Mr. Bingley will dance with you at the next ball. Oh, said Lydia stoutly, I'm not afraid, for though I am the youngest, I'm the tallest. The rest of the evening was spent in conjecturing how soon he would return Mr. Bennet's visit, and determining when they should ask him to dinner. See, this is what I thought would happen. Exactly. Alright. Let us go on to chapter 3. Not all did Mrs. Bennet, however, with the assistance of her 5 daughters. I don't know why I was about to say dollars. The assistance of her $5.
Oh, kitty.
Yeah, Lydia flexing that height, totally. She's like in the room with the rest of her sisters and is like, I am the youngest, but I am the tallest. And you just know that this is something that she brings up constantly. That's fair. $5 could get you a lot back then. It's true.
Do you want out, baby? I can't tell. Oh, you got a hack.
Yeah. Norman says, I was just thinking, and I know this isn't where the story's going, but it would be friggin' hilarious if this whole book was like Waiting for Godot, and the rumored rich bachelor actually doesn't exist and never actually shows up. That would be awesome. The whole book is just different variations of, when are we going to meet Mr. Bingley? And then Mr. Bingley doesn't even exist. Green says $5 would have definitely been enough for chicken nuggies back then. That's true. Mrs. Bennett, with her $5 and her 5 chicken nuggets, was ready to face the day.
Oh, kitty.
Yeah, waiting for Pride and Prejudice. Just more people showing up in his waiting lounge. We never meet him. $5 on Mr. Bingley is actually gay. Curious. It sounds like you've read it before, so I don't know if this is. I mean, I don't know. But anyways, because like I said, I know that the love interest name was Mr. Darcy, so I know that this isn't the... Oh, Green has not. Okay, you just sounded very knowledgeable. Fair enough. Or have I? Oh, okay. Messing with me, I see.
Okay, you do want out? You do want out? Sweetie pie?
Green in the flames of my confusion. Alright. Devolves into a kidnapping mystery. They all try to figure out who did away with Mr. Bingley. He was never there in the first place. I love the idea, like, the whole first part is just like, wow, when's Mr. Bingley gonna show up? And then partway through they're like, Mr. Bingley, he hasn't shown up. He must have been kidnapped. And the rest becomes like this grand, like, mystery plot trying to find out, and he just was never there. Incredible. Oh, okay. Green says, no, I haven't, but I have the zombie one there to get to. Nice. Alright, let us continue. Not all that Mrs. Bennet, however, with the assistance of her $5, could ask on the subject was sufficient to draw from her husband any satisfactory description of Mr. Bingley. They attacked him in various ways, with barefaced questions, ingenious suppositions, and distant surmises. That's amazing. They attacked him in various ways. I'm just imagining this. I'm just imagining this, like, superimposed over a fight scene. It's just like, alright, they attack in various ways. Barefaced questions. And it's like a sword swing, ingenious suppositions, and then another thing, and then distant surmises, and someone in the back with a sniper, or something like that. Anyway. They attacked him in various ways, with barefaced questions, ingenious suppositions, and distant surmises. But he eluded the skill of them all, and they were at last obliged to accept the second-hand intelligence of their neighbour, Lady Lucas. Her report was highly favourable. Sir William had been delighted with him. He was quite young, wonderfully handsome, extremely agreeable, and to crown the whole, he meant to be at the next assembly with a large party. Nothing could be more delightful. To be fond of dancing was a certain step towards falling in love, and very lively hopes of Mr. Bingley's heart were entertained. I am curious, because, like, I know that this is a romance, and so I'm curious if, like, at the time that this was published, that people knew it was a romance, and that this was kind of a bait and switch, that you're like, alright, here's Mr. Bingley, it's our boy, and then he's not our boy. I don't know if they thought about things that way back then.
Oh, did you come back to sneeze, sweetie?
Cue the low detail chibbies. I'm curious what that's in reference to.
Hi, Cubo. You wanna come sit with me? You wanna come sit with me, kitty? Well, I guess you can if you want.
Alright. It basically, it also is like, oh yeah, he's young, he's handsome, he's agreeable, and best of all, he likes to party. I'm sure it just means, like, they want to meet him at the assembly, and so they're like, yes, he's coming to the assembly. But it sounds like he likes to party as the best thing, which is kind of hilarious. Alright.
Oh, baby, what you doing?
Can I show you? Oh, no, he moved. His butt was in the air. It was funny.
But that's the bow. But that's the bow. So cute.
Alright. If I can see, if I can but see, one of my daughters happily settled at Netherfield, said Mrs. Bennet to her husband, and all the others equally well married, I shall have nothing to wish for. In a few days, Mr. Bingley returned Mr. Bennet's visit, and sat about 10 minutes with him in his library. He had entertained hopes of being admitted to a sight of the young ladies, of whose beauty he had heard much, but he saw only the father. The ladies were somewhat more fortunate, for they had the advantage of ascertaining from an upper window that he wore a blue coat and rode a black horse. That's amazing. They were more fortunate, because they had the advantage of snooping through the window. Delightful. An invitation to dinner was soon afterward dispatched, and already had Mrs. Bennet planned the courses that were to be... Wait, did I miss something? That were to do credit to her housekeeping, when an answer arrived which deferred it all. Mr. Bingley was obliged to be in town the following day, and consequently unable to accept the honour of their invitation, and Mrs. Bennet was quite disconcerted. She could not imagine what business he could have in town so soon after his arrival in Hertfordshire, and she began to fear that he might be always flying about from one place to another, and never settled at Netherfield as he ought to be. Lady Lucas quieted her fears a little by starting the idea of his being gone to London, only to get a large party for the ball, and a report soon followed that Mr. Bingley was to bring 12 ladies and 7 gentlemen with him to the assembly. The girls grieved over such a number of ladies, but were comforted the day before the ball by hearing that instead of 12, he had only brought 6 with him from London, his 5 sisters and a cousin. And when the party entered the assembly room, it consisted of only 5 altogether: Mr. Bingley, his 2 sisters, the husband of the eldest, and another young man. I'm looking for him. Is the other young man Mr. Darcy, or is he somebody just a red shirt? Mr. Bingley was good-looking and gentlemanlike. He had a pleasant countenance and easy, unaffected manners. His sisters were fine women, with an air of decided fashion. His brother-in-law, Mr. Hurst, merely looked the gentleman, but his friend... I was right! Mr. Darcy soon drew the attention of the room by his fine, tall person, handsome features, noble mind, and the report which was in general circulation within 5 minutes after his entrance of his having 10,000 a year. I love that. General circulation within 5 minutes of his entrance. Incredible. The gentleman pronounced him to be a fine figure of a man. The ladies declared he was much handsomer than Mr. Bingley, and he was looked at with great admiration for about half the evening, till his manners gave a disgust which turned the tide of his popularity. That's right! This is something I've heard, that he is, like, he's kind of mean. Like, he's kind of, or maybe not mean. He's either awkward or mean or blunt. One of those things. Anyways. Till his manners gave a disgust which turned the tide of his popularity, for he was discovered to be proud. Aha! So he's the proud one, and she's the prejudiced one. He was discovered to be proud, to be above his company, and above being pleased. He's above everybody in the room, and he's just he's just generally above being happy. That's just not something he does. Love it. Yeah, Bingley was rich. Darcy is rich. And above his company, and above being pleased, and not all his large estate in Derbyshire could then save him from having a most forbidding, disagreeable countenance, and being unworthy to be compared with his friend. That's amazing. Yeah, he's super rich, he's got a great house, but none of that compares that he's a rude little dude. He can have that third zero, yes, exactly. I keep making my mic go red. I'm gonna turn it down a little. Anyways. I think that's so funny, though, that they're all, like, that seems to be, especially what all that Mrs. Bennet cares about is, like, my daughters get married, they get married rich. And he is super rich, and so it's kind of interesting that she isn't, like, I don't care if he's rude, he's rich, go for him. You know, they're just like, oh, like, he's super rich, he's more rich than Mr. Bingley. And then it's like, he just says one, like, slightly rude comment, and they're like, he's not the one, he's not for you. Yeah, exactly. We have found the proud, everybody. We have found the pride to this prejudice. All right. Mr. Bingley had soon made himself acquainted with all the principal people in the room. He was lively and unreserved, danced every dance, was angry that the ball closed so early. Oh, I don't know why that's so funny to me. Like, this is top tier. This is the man that you want. You want your man to be angry that the ball closes early. I love that. I just saw when Michael Kenson walks up. Nice day, isn't it? It was nicer a moment ago. Cancelled. Amazing. Alright. He was lively and unreserved, danced every dance, was angry that the ball closed so early, and talked of giving one himself at Netherfield. Such amiable qualities much as I don't know why this is so funny to me, but just like the amiable, like, you want a man who's gonna party all night. This is top tier. This is the man that you want. And that speaks for itself, you know? Yeah, Bingley real dense to bring his hot, rude, rich friend to his looking for a wife shindig as well. Oh, that's amazing. How many words is that? Looking for a wife shindig. It's 5 words. Looking for a wife shindig to submit as a prompt. Oh, incredible. I mean, that's kind of the question, though, like, because the first line was like, oh, yeah, universally understood that he wants a wife. The question is that, like, Mrs. Bennet sees him, and they're like, it's like the laser eyes, and she's like, eligible bachelor acquired. Or if it's like, or if he's like, yes, this is my party. I'm here to find a wife. I'm looking out for her, you know? Miss Bingley, daughter, mother, cousin. I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about, but they said that he had sisters and a cousin, and only 2 of them came. Only 2 of the ladies came to the party, so I don't know which one it is. But anyways, oh, it's a sister, of course. Okay. What a contrast between him and his friend. Mr. Darcy danced only once with Mrs. Hurst, and once with Miss Bingley. declined... Oh, I see, that's what you saw. And once with Miss Bingley, declined being introduced to any other lady, and spent the rest of the evening walking around the room, speaking occasionally to one of his own party. Okay, I don't know why that notification's coming up right now. Yeah, that's a very spooky one, but those are the laser eyes I was thinking of. I just saw the caption, heavy breathing. I got 5 daughters. Oh my goodness. Oh, crazy. Anyways. Declined being introduced to any other lady and spent the rest of the evening in walking around the room, speaking occasionally to one of his own party. I mean, right now he just sounds like an introvert, man. Like, he just sounds like, he's like, I don't really want to introduce myself to everyone. I'm just gonna hang out with the people that I know. And he might come off as a little rude sometimes, because, you know, he don't know how to interact very well, you know. I'm not seeing too much to hate so far. Yeah. Oh, the next line. Speaking occasionally to one of his own party. His character was decided. He was the proudest. He's the proudest, everybody. You get it? He's the proudest, most disagreeable man in the world, and everybody hoped that he would never come there again. Amongst most violent against him was Mrs. Bennet, whose dislike of his general behavior was sharpened into particular resentment by his having slighted one of her daughters. Ooh, I see whose name is next. I'm ready for this. This is gonna be fun. Yeah, Norman says, is it weird that I kind of think it'd be fun to piss off a room full of people that badly? Exactly. He's making a much stronger impression than Mr. Bingley. I give you wife. You give us financial security. Fair trade, exactly. Okay. Elizabeth Bennet had been obliged by the scarcity of gentlemen. We don't, our crop of gentlemen, it ain't good this year. We don't have a good harvest of gentlemen this year. Elizabeth Bennet had been obliged by the scarcity of gentlemen to sit down for 2 dances, and during part of that time, Mr. Darcy had been standing near enough for her to overhear a conversation between him and Mr. Bingley, who came from the dance for a few minutes to press his friend to join it. "Come, Darcy," said he, "I must have you dance. I hate to see you standing about by yourself in this stupid manner. You had much better dance." "I certainly shall not. You know how I detest it, unless I am particularly acquainted with my partner. At such an assembly as this, it would be insupportable. Your sisters are engaged, and there is not another woman in this room whom it would not be a punishment to me to stand up with." I mean, it's not too bad. I'm not seeing too much to hate about him. And good info. His sisters are engaged, so we know they ain't an option for him. This is the most insulting line for sure. Now I'm seeing the disagreeableness in the last line here. It would be a punishment to stand with any of these ladies. Yeah, the rude is the last part for sure. I would not be so fastidious as you are, cried Bingley. "For a kingdom! Upon my honour, I never met with so many pleasant girls in my life as I have this evening, and there are several of them you see uncommonly pretty." "You are dancing with the only handsome girl in the room," said Mr. Darcy, looking at the eldest Miss Bennet. "I'm curious who that is. I assume it's not Elizabeth. So it must be Kitty, Jane. It's not Lydia. So we have Elizabeth, Kitty, Jane, Lydia. And who's the other one? Have we been introduced to their name? Yeah, that 10G a year is going to the guy's head, totally. Oh yeah, Jane was the pretty one. Okay, so Jane must be the oldest one that he's dancing with. Oh, she's the most beautiful creature I ever beheld. But there's one of her sisters sitting down just beside you, who is very pretty, and I dare say, very agreeable. Do let me ask my partner to introduce you. Oh, it's so funny, this whole, like, the manners of introducing you. It's like, she's sitting right there. You can't say hi, though. Like, you need to be introduced. That's how it works. But anyways. What do you mean? And turning around, he looked for a moment at Elizabeth, until, catching her eye, he withdrew his own and coldly said, "She is tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me, and I am in no humour at present to give consequence to young ladies who are slighted by other men. You had better return to your partner and enjoy her smiles, for you are wasting your time with me." Oh, okay, so I was confused about the slighted by other men line, but I think he's saying, like, nobody's dancing with her. So, like, she's been slighted by the other men. So, like, she's kind of the bottom of the barrel right now, and I ain't dancing with her. Oh, yeah. Calling a woman the most beautiful creature. Can't tell if it's flattering or insulting. I guess it kind of depends on the time. I kind of assumed that it's genuinely meant as a compliment, but it could be, like, an objectifying even for that time. I do like the enjoy her smiles. That is kind of cute. Like, instead of just enjoy her company or, like, go hang out with your pretty girl, it's like, enjoy her smiles. There's some poeticism here. Yeah. Totally. You can't talk to them without being introduced. How do I get introduced then? You have to find someone who knows them. How do I do that? You have to be introduced. Totally. Exactly. I should like look up the customs at this time. That is one of those things I wasn't thinking about looking up beforehand, but it could be helpful to know, like, a little more concretely, okay, here's how things worked back then. Yeah, exactly. I will not be tempted. I bet later in the book he will be tempted. Totally. Mr. Bingley followed his advice. Mr. Darcy walked off, and Elizabeth remained with no very cordial feelings towards him. Nah. Is that right? No. I keep doing that! I don't know why. She told the story, however, with great spirit among her friends, for she had a lively, playful disposition, which delighted in anything ridiculous. Interesting. So Elizabeth was into it. She was like, "Oh, this is funny." Like, he wasn't into me, I guess. Like, oh yeah. So she didn't no very cordial feelings. Like, at the very least, she doesn't feel good about him, if not feeling actively bad about him. But she still thinks it's a funny story. She is worthy. She is worthy of the title of main character. The evening altogether passed off pleasantly to the whole family. Mrs. Bennet had seen her eldest daughter much admired by the Netherfield party. Every time I see that word, I think it's Netherlands, and I'm always, like, just a little bit away from saying Netherlands. I apologize if I slip up at some point in the book. Anyways. Yes, exactly. Darcy makes fun of her, and she goes to her friends like, "Kiddo, this asshole." Exactly. That's totally what happened. I love it. Like, she could hold her head high and not be like, "Oh, he didn't like me." She's just like, "Oh man, what an asshole." Anyways, Mrs. Bennet had seen her eldest daughter much admired by the Netherfield party. Mr. Bingley had danced with her twice, and she had been distinguished by her sisters. Jane was as much gratified by this as her mother could be, though in a quieter way. Elizabeth felt Jane's pleasure. Mary's the other one, okay. Mary had heard herself mentioned to Miss Bingley as the most accomplished girl in the neighbourhood, and Catherine and Lydia had been fortunate enough to be never without partners, which was all that they had yet learned to care for at a ball. Mary, Lydia, Elizabeth, Jane, Kitty. Who's Catherine? Oh, Catherine must be Kitty. That must be her actual name. Interesting. Okay. The Netherfield sounds like some Stargate-esque portal to a hell realm. Totally. The Netherfield. That's gonna be my headcanon until it's undoubtedly proven wrong that, like, that Netherfield is just some hell dimension that he lives in. It's like the... Is it called the Nether? Yeah, the Nether in Minecraft. It's just... Yeah, I live there with zombie pigmen. Like, they won't bother you, don't worry. And that's why he likes to party. He doesn't want to go home to the Netherfield. Yes, Catherine Kitty. I got you now. I don't know why that feels like such a modern nickname to me. That's so cute. I love that they had that back then. That they. Yeah, exactly. It sounds real obvious when you break it down like that. Anyways. They returned, therefore, in good spirits to Longbourn, the village where they lived, and, of course, they were the principal inhabitants. Why is that of course? Of course, our main characters are the principal inhabitants. They found Mr. Bennet still up, and found Mr. Bennet still up. With a book, he was regardless of time, and on the present occasion he had a good deal of curiosity as to the event of an evening which had raised such splendid expectations. He had rather hoped that all his wife's views on the stranger would be disappointed, but he soon found that he had a very different story to hear. Ooh, I thought I was going to say she had a very different story to tell, and so I thought I read it wrong. Mr. Bennet, it seems like he's always like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. But, you know, like, if you wanted to just, like, tell the story and I happened to be here, I'd be cool with that. Oh, my dear Mr. Bennet, as she entered the room, we have had a most delightful evening, a most excellent ball. I wish you had been there. Jane was so admired. Nothing could be like it. Everybody said how well she looked, and Mr. Bingley thought her quite beautiful, and danced with her twice. Only think of that, my dear. He actually danced with her twice, and she was the only creature in the room that he asked a second time. First of all, he asked Miss Lucas. I was so vexed to see him stand up with her, but, however, he did not admire her at all. Indeed, nobody can, you know. Oh, that's there's another bird. Yeah, he didn't admire her because nobody can admire her. Oh, man. And I'm just imagining, like, he goes over to Miss Lucas, and, like, Mrs. Bennet just, like, scowls from the corner, and then he goes up to Jane, and she, like, switches. It's the, like, kind of thing. Even Mom calling the pretty on a creature savage, yeah. That's kind of what makes me wonder if that's just, like, something they said, is they called people creatures back then. It could be, because, like, creature is, like, I don't know why my light keeps doing that. Creature in its essence just means created thing. And so especially, like, I think this is at the time where, like, Christianity is still prevalent. I might be wrong about that. I mean, it was prevalent in a lot of eras. And so it could just be, like, it could be intended to be honoring or just saying, like, she's a created thing. Instead of, like, talking down to her as if she's an animal or something like that. Yeah, fair enough. Norman says, it's meant to be endearing. It just feels very much of its time. Don't know how well it would land nowadays. Probably not well. Anyways. Wait. Did I miss something? Oh yeah, but however, he did not admire her at all. Indeed, nobody can, you know. And he seemed quite struck with Jane as she was going down the dance. So he inquired who she was and got introduced and asked her for the two next. Then the two third he danced with Miss King, and the two fourth with Maria Lucas, and the two fifth with Jane again, and the two sixth with Lizzie, and the boulanger? I don't know how to pronounce that. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so I guess the introduction thing maybe isn't exactly what I thought, because like I was totally thinking of it as Mako said, that it's like, okay, you can't ask her to dance until you've been introduced. But I guess like he could ask her to dance, but he still needed to be introduced later. But Mr. Darcy had to be introduced to Liz to dance with her, so I don't know. Boulanger. Okay, gotcha. If he had any compassion for me, cried her husband impatiently, he would not have danced half so much. For God's sake, say no more of his partners. Oh, that he had sprained his ankle in the first dance. We got another fun spelling, boys. Oh, my dear, continued Mrs. Bennet, I am quite delighted with him. He is so excessively handsome, and his sisters are charming women. I never in my life saw anything more elegant than their dresses. I dare say the lace upon Mrs. Hurst's gown. Here she was interrupted again. Mr. Bennet protested against any description of finery, and she was therefore obliged to seek another branch of the subject, and related with much bitterness of spirit and some exaggeration the shocking rudeness of Mr. Darcy. But I can assure you, she added, that Lizzie does not lose much by not suiting his fancy, for he is a most disagreeable, horrid man, not at all worth pleasing, so high and so conceited that there was no enduring him. He walked here and he walked there, fancying himself so very great, not handsome enough to dance with. I wish you had been there, my dear, to have given him one of your set-downs. I quite detest the man. It reminds me of when the Game Grumps played Horse Club Adventures. I was just rewatching it, and when the like snooty girl shows up, they don't actually give a good reason for why they don't like her, especially because it's badly translated. It just says like, yeah, we don't like her because she always carries on about this or that. And this has those kinds of vibes that it's like, he walked here and he walked there and he's just the worst, you know? Oh, amazing. Okay, what time is it? Close to midnight. The next chapter is pretty short. I think we can do another one. Alright. Chapter 4. When Jane and Elizabeth were alone, the former, who had been cautious in her praise of Mr. Bingley before, expressed to her sister how much she admired him. "He's just what a young man ought to be," said she, "sensible, good-humoured, lively, and I never saw such happy manners, so much ease, with such perfect good breeding." That don't land so well nowadays. "He's also handsome," replied Elizabeth, "which a young man ought likewise to be, if he possibly can. His character is thereby complete." Character unlocked. Not unlocked, just like character complete. Yeah. I love that. Like, it's great for someone to be handsome if they can be. If you can manage it, be handsome, you know? I was very much flattered by his asking me to dance a second time. I did not expect such a compliment. Did not you? I did for you. But that is one great difference between us. Compliments always take you by surprise, and me never. I know I'm worthy of being complimented. You're humble. It sounds like she might have some pride of her own. What could be more natural than his asking you again? He could not help seeing that you were about 5 times as pretty as every other woman in the room. No thanks to his gallantry for that. Well, he certainly is very agreeable, and I give you leave to like him. You have liked many a stupider person. That's awesome. Oh yeah, you have my blessing to like him. You've liked much stupider people. Feels accurate to what sisters might say today. Yeah, guys collecting character traits like Infinity Stones. You've collected partying all night. You've collected being agreeable. You've collected being handsome. Finally, you have them all. Dear Lizzie. Oh, you are a great deal too apt, you know, to like people in general. You never see a fault in anybody. I see. I thought she was, for a second there, she was saying you can't like anybody, but no, she's saying you like everybody, because you never see a fault in anybody. So, you never see fault in anybody. All the world are good and agreeable in your eyes. I never heard you speak ill of a human being in my life. Frogs, though. Frogs I've heard you speak ill of. Yeah. The most elusive stone. Not stupid. It's not even smart. It's just not stupid. Oh. Let's see. I've never heard you speak ill of a human being in my life. I would wish not to be hasty in censuring anyone, but I always speak what I think. I know you do, and it is that which makes me wonder, with your good sense, to be so honestly blind to the follies and nonsense of others. Affectation of candor is common enough. One meets it everywhere. But to be candid without ostentation or design, to take the good of everybody's character and make it still better, and say nothing of the bad, belongs to you alone. And so, you like this man's sisters too, do you? Their manners are not equal to his. I hope that she's about to ask what Jane thinks about Mr. Darcy and watch her scramble to find something good to say. Certainly not, at first, but there are very pleasing women when you converse with them. Yeah, but they are very pleasing women when you converse with them. Miss Bingley is to live with her brother and keep his house, and I am much mistaken if we shall not find a very charming neighbour in her. Elizabeth listened in silence, but was not convinced. Their behaviour at the assembly had not been calculated to please in general. It was more quickness of observation and less pliancy of temper than her sister. And with a judgment too unassailed by an attention to herself, she was very little disposed to approve them. They were, in fact, very fine ladies, not deficient in good humour where they were pleased. Can I get some vitamins? I have a good humour deficiency. Not deficient in good humour when they were pleased, nor in the power of being agreeable when they chose it, but proud and conceited. They were rather handsome, had been educated in one of the first private seminaries in town, had a fortune of £20,000, were in the habit of spending more than they ought, and of associating with people of rank, and were therefore in every respect, entitled to think well of themselves, and meanly of others. They were of a respectable family in the north of England, a circumstance more deeply impressed on their memories than that their brother's fortune and their own had been acquired by trade. Oh, I see. So, like, they were... I'm not sure I quite know what that means. So, like, they got a fortune by trade. And is it saying they had to leave, like, North England? And, like, that's sticking in their minds because... like, they care more about the fact that they had to leave England than their brother has a fortune? I'm not sure. Guys. I think she might have some prejudices. It's true. Good point. I have a little bit of a Jane issue in some respects, in that I think I trust, like, the viewpoint character too much, because I was like... oh, Jane sees, like, the good in everybody, but, like, Elizabeth, she sees them, like, honestly. But no, like, yeah, if he's Pride, she's Prejudice. So she's just seeing them in a prejudiced way. That she's like, oh, they're only out for themselves, you know, when actually... Oh yeah, that's a good point. She put her own name in the book as the prettiest one. The audacity, for sure. That would... Oh... I feel like that... I don't know if that would be cancel-worthy in today's culture, but it would not... I think it would be frowned upon in today's culture. Yeah, good point. Protagonist bias is something very interesting in fiction and can be used for great effect when evoked, for sure. Let's see, where were we? Okay. Mr. Bingley inherited property to the amount of nearly £100,000 from his father, who had intended to purchase an estate, but did not live to do it. I like that phrasing. He intended to do this, he just didn't live long enough to do it. He didn't live to do it. Mr. Bingley intended it likewise, and sometimes made choice of his country. But as he was now provided with a good house and the liberty of a manor, it was doubtful to many of those who best knew the easiness of his temper, whether he might not spend the remainder of his days at Netherfield, and leave the next generation to purchase. Homeboy, he's gonna spend the rest of his time in the Nether. His sisters are very anxious for his having an estate of his own, but though he was now established only as a tenant, Miss Bingley was by no means unwilling to preside at his table, nor was Mrs. Hurst, who had married a man of more fashion than fortune, less disposed to consider his house as her home when it suited her. I am certain that fashion doesn't, like, right today, it basically only means clothes, like, well, it doesn't only mean clothes, but it mostly refers to clothes nowadays, and so I'm sure it means kind of like a demeanor, like, or like he's like he has a good demeanor, or he I don't know, like he's put together, I guess would probably what it means. But the way it sounds to my ear just sounds like, yeah, she married him because he has a good fashion sense, man. Like, he has like villain levels of swagger here. I don't care about the fortune, I just care about the drip. That's true. Greed says, I gotta admit though, only a few chapters in it, we have some good character setups and the marriage goal laid out as well. Pretty quick setup. Very true. Very true. And they're very short chapters as well. Like in another book, I think this would all be one chapter. So yep, we know what we're after. We know a bit about who the characters are, and it's flowed pretty naturally so far. So, pretty good. All right. Mr. Bingley had not been of age 2 years when he was tempted by an accidental recommendation to look at Netherfield House. He did look at it and into it for half an hour, was pleased with the situation and the principal rooms, satisfied with what the owner said in its praise, and took it immediately. Between him and Darcy, there was a very steady friendship. In spite of a great opposition of character, Bingley was endeared to Darcy by the easiness, openness, is that ductility or ductility? I think ductility. Ductility of his temper, though no disposition could offer a greater contrast to his own, and though with his own he never appeared dissatisfied. On the strength of Darcy's regard, Bingley had the firmest reliance, and of his judgment the highest opinion. In understanding, Darcy was the superior. Bingley was by no means deficient, but Darcy was clever. He was at the same time haughty, reserved, and fastidious, and his manners, though well-bred, were not inviting. In that respect, his friend had greatly the advantage. Bingley was sure of being liked everywhere he appeared. Darcy was continually giving offense. Oh, that's smart. This is like the 3D chess wingman strategy. Like, instead of having the wingman who talks you up, you have the wingman who just is so deplorable that you look amazing next to him. Okay, good to know, Mako, but it was wonderful to have you here. Anyways, the manner in which they spoke of the Meriton assembly was sufficiently characteristic. Bingley had never met with pleasanter people or prettier girls in his life. Everybody had been most kind and attentive to him. There had been no formality, no stiffness. He had soon felt acquainted with all the room, and as to Miss Bennet, he could not conceive an angel more beautiful. Darcy, on the contrary, had seen a collection of people in whom there was little beauty and no fashion, for none of whom he had felt the smallest interest, and from none received either attention or pleasure. Miss Bennet he acknowledged to be pretty, but she smiled too much. So that line that I thought was cute earlier when he was like, oh, you should enjoy her smile more. He thought she smiled too much. Oh, it was like meant to be a diss. Oh, that's so funny. But that's pretty clever. That's a pretty clever way to write this character, you know, to have him say something that's seemingly nice, but is actually not. I just got a loading thing on my cursor. What was I gonna say? Mrs. Hurst and her sister allowed it to be so, but still they admired her and liked her, and pronounced her to be a sweet girl, and one whom they should not object to know more of. Miss Bennet was therefore established as a sweet girl, and their brother felt authorized by such commendation to think of her as he chose. Just get out the stamp that says "sweet girl" on it. Established. So I guess it's saying that, like, the sisters are like, yeah, she does smile too much, but, like, we like her, I guess. Let's see. This one's pretty short, too. It makes it very easy to read, because I really like books that have short chapters. They're just so much easier and faster to read. Okay, so 6 seems a little bit bigger, so maybe we'll do 5 and then call it a night. Be a little after. Yeah, it is midnight right now. So no Discord. Just calling it as I see. I think Bingley's saying whatever everyone wants to hear, while Darcy's a little bit of that autistic bluntness, just a little bit lightly garnished with it. Mm-hmm. The pacing is surprisingly quick for an old novel. Yeah, totally. Another thing that I'm seeing why people really like it, because it's very easy to read. Like, sometimes old novels and, like, the difference in the language back then and today can make them hard to get through. But this one does not feel like that to me, so I can definitely see that is most agreeable. I'm gonna be talking like that for a while, I feel like. But yeah, like I feel like Mr. Bingley and Jane are kind of seeming like a good match, because if Jane is always seeing the goodness in people, and Mr. Bingley kind of seems somewhat similar to that, where he's like, yeah, let's party, everything's great, and I don't see anything bad going on ever. And yeah, I think that Mr. Darcy totally just seems like the socially awkward or autistic kid in the corner who is maybe kind of blunt because he just, you know, doesn't feel comfortable and doesn't know how to interact with people. And it is funny that they're like, oh, like, he has good manners, he's been well taught, but he still sucks, you know? Alright. Let's continue on. Chapter 5. Within a short walk of Longbourn lived a family with whom the Bennets were particularly intimate. Sir William Lucas had been formerly in trade in Meryton, where he had made a tolerable fortune, and a tolerable fortune. I love that. It's like, yeah, how much do you make? A tolerable fortune. I can handle it. He had made a tolerable fortune. Oh, okay. I don't know why that was. Anyways, he made a tolerable fortune and risen to the honor of knighthood by an address to the king during his mayoralty. The distinction had perhaps been felt too strongly. It had given him a disgust to his business and to his residence in a small market town. And quitting them both, he had removed with his family to a house about a mile from Meryton, denominated from that period Lucas Lodge, where he could think with pleasure of his own importance and, unshackled by business, occupy himself solely in being civil to all the world. That sounds like, well, like he didn't like his house anymore, so he found like this lodge in the woods, and he sits there and he contemplates how important he is. I wish I could tolerate a fortune, exactly. But though elated by his rank, it did not render him supercilious. On the contrary, he was all attention to everybody. By nature inoffensive, friendly, and obliging, his presentation at St. James's had made him courteous. Lady Lucas was a very good kind of woman. Not too clever to be a valuable neighbor to Mrs. Bennet. They had several children. The eldest of them, a sensible, intelligent young woman, about 27, was Elizabeth's an intimate friend. That the Miss Lucases and the Miss Bennets should meet to talk over ball was absolutely necessary, and the morning after the assembly brought the former to Longbourn to hear and to communicate. "You began the evening well, Charlotte," said Mrs. Bennet, with civil self-command to Miss Lucas. "You were Miss Bingley's first choice." "Yes, but he seemed to like his second better." "Oh, you mean Jane? I suppose, because he danced with her twice. To be sure, that did seem as if he admired her. Indeed, I rather believe he did. I heard something about it, but I hardly know that. Something about Mr. Robinson." Oh, Mrs. Bennet, amazing. Like, oh, you think he liked her? Like, I don't know. Like, I guess so. All the while he's like, yes, he did. You know, he put Jane. Perhaps you mean what I overheard between him and Mr. Robinson? Did not I mention it to you? Mr. Robinson's asking him how he liked our Meryton assemblies, and whether he liked... whether he did not think there were a great many pretty women in the room, and which he thought the prettiest, and his answering immediately to the last question, "Oh, the eldest Miss Bennet, beyond a doubt. There cannot be two opinions on that point." "Upon my word! Well, that was very decided indeed. That does seem as if... But, however, it may all come to nothing, you know." "My overhearings were more to the purpose than yours, Eliza," said Charlotte. "Mr. Darcy is not so well worth listening to as his friend, is he? Poor Eliza, to be only just tolerable. I mean, hey, your husband tolerates his fortune, and that's a pretty good state to be in, so it feels like tolerable's an okay place to be in. I beg you would not put it into Lizzie's head to be vexed by his ill treatment, for he's such a disagreeable man that it would be quite a misfortune to be liked by him. Mrs. Long told me last night that he sat close to her for half an hour without once opening his lips." "Are you quite sure, ma'am? Is not there a little mistake?" "Oh, that's Jane." "Are you quite sure, ma'am? Is not there a little mistake?" said Jane. "I certainly saw Mr. Darcy speaking to her." "Aye, because she asked him at last how he liked Netherfield, and he could not help answering her. But she said he seemed very angry at being spoke to." "Miss Bingley told me," said Jane, "that he never speaks much unless among his intimate acquaintance. With them he is remarkably agreeable." Again, introvert behavior, man. "I do not believe a word of it, my dear. If he had been so very agreeable, he would have talked to Mrs. Long. But I can guess how it was. Everybody says that he is ate up with pride, and I dare say he had heard somehow that Mrs. Long does not keep a carriage, and had come to the ball in a hack chaise." I mean, maybe that speaks to some humility in the Pride. Maybe, like, he doesn't need a bunch of, like, servants carrying him around in some kind of palanquin. I do not mind his not talking to Mrs. Long, said Miss Lucas, but I wish he had danced with Eliza. Another time, Lizzie, said her mother. I would not dance with him if I were you. I believe, ma'am, I may safely promise you never dance with him. His pride, said Miss Lucas, does not offend me so much as pride often does, because there is an excuse for it. One cannot wonder that so very fine a young man, with family, fortune, everything in his favour, should think highly of himself. If I may so express it, he has a right to be proud. I thought she was gonna say, like, he's been through hardship or something, and she's like, he's rich, man. Like, he's rich, he's got it made. Like, okay, he can be proud. I don't know about that, Mrs. Lucas. That is very true, replied Elizabeth, and I could easily forgive his pride if he had not mortified mine. Pride, observed Mary, who piqued herself upon the solidity of her reflections. I don't know what that means. Oh, I guess she's saying, like, I speak facts, you know, my reflections on things are true, are solid. It's a very common failing, I believe. By all that I have ever read, I am convinced that it is very common indeed. That human nature is particularly prone to it, and that there are very few of us who do not cherish a feeling of self-complacency on score of some quality or other, real or imaginary. Vanity and pride are different things, though the words are often used synonymously. A person may be proud without being vain. Pride relates more to our opinion of ourselves, vanity to what we would have others think of us. You know, she might be right. She might be right to be proud of her, she might be right to pique herself on the solidity of her reflections. Because, you know, I think she's speaking facts here. It's true. It's a common failing. And I like her distinction between vanity and pride. And that's kind of an interesting thing. Like, pride relates to how you think of yourself. Like, you think of yourself too highly. And, like, vanity is, oh, I want everybody else to think highly of me. That's really interesting. If I were as rich as Mr. Darcy, cried a young Lucas who came with his sisters. Okay, I should not care how proud I was. I would keep a pack of foxhounds and drink a bottle of wine every day. I don't know what that means. That sounds like he's saying I would be proud, but he's saying I shouldn't care how proud I was. I guess he's just saying, yeah, I would be proud, and I wouldn't care that people are dissing me for it because I can have dogs and wine. I mean, okay, I see your point there. And then you would drink a great deal more than you ought, said Mrs. Bennet. And if I were to see you at it, I should take away your bottle directly. The boy protested that she should not. She continued to declare that she would. And the argument ended only with the visit. That's awesome. They're just like, you're gonna become a good-for-nothing drunk, boy. I am not. And then it just keeps going until they leave. Don't do a lot of self-peeking. Yeah. Never occurred to me to peek myself. Yeah, tolerable sounds like a challenge. You think you can tolerate me? We will see how that works for you. Incredible. Well, I think that's where we're gonna end for tonight, everybody. But this has been so much fun. I've been enjoying this so much more than I thought it would. I think this is a great one to start with because there's a lot of fun things to react to in it. I really hope that you guys have enjoyed it and are looking forward to the next one because I was planning on doing other stuff this week, but it's possible I'll just be like, I need to read more. We'll see how it goes. That says, congrats on breaking in the new channel. Thank you. I appreciate that. Norwood says, that was fun. I enjoyed that. Glad to hear it. Green says, thanks for the stream, guys. It was very fun. Yay. Glad to hear that y'all had a good time. Well, if all goes well and I'm not too tired or there's not like something else that I need to work on, I will hopefully be able to keep streaming at night, because as we've established, I'm trying to hit that that seven stream marker. But am I gonna add some tiles with rules and such to the Twitch page? Yeah, you might need to help me with that. Let's talk about that after the after the stream. I've just kind of been doing the bare minimum so far. But yeah, I feel like on the writing group streams I like have a better wrap up. I feel like it makes more sense when to wrap up. Now I'm like, do I just stop talking? Do I just hit the button? But yes, it's been a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I will see you next time, hopefully sooner rather than later. Bye-bye.